Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross, who's a former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former and a guest on the Black Knight Nation podcast. If you're watching right now on YouTube, if you can go onto our Black Knight Nation YouTube channel, you'll find an interview with Clay Daniels that we had on Sunday, a former Army defensive back. Freshman year was 1996, a 2000 grad, a a two a 2000 grad, and what a great podcast with Clay. We really appreciate Clay coming on and sharing his thoughts on the Army Football Brotherhood and his time at Army. So check that out tomorrow. We are looks like we're going to get Rolly Stitchway tomorrow on our podcast, so that'll be another great guest to have on for it. Seth Mendelson here for Black Knight Nation with me tonight. Man, it's late night podcasting, but hey, we're up and we're going to talk some Army football, right, Seth? And
Absolutely.
this is the week.
I got to tell
Yeah,
you,
this is the week to talk.
Riley Stitchway is an Army football legend, and it's a coup for us to get him in to speak. I know he has a lot to say. I know he will have a lot to say about West Point, both when he played and the history of the academy, at least the football team from the '60s until today. And I know he has a lot to say. And he has remained committed to the academy and to the football team throughout. So that's going to be very exciting tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it, and just a guy who we've wanted to get on for a very long time. I happened to connect with him via email, and looks like we're gonna do that tomorrow. So, uh, yesterday I was on. First off, I want to talk about the line in this game. Right, I haven't checked it today at all. This evening, but last time I checked it, Army was a 2.5 point underdog, and they opened up as a 4.5 point favorite. So the lines moved 7 points in this game since it opened up 2 weeks ago. The Sunday after the UMass game, you get the first line on this game, and now it's getting closer to kickoff on Saturday, 3 o'clock at Lincoln Financial Field. And Army is a 2.5 point underdog in this game. So pretty interesting there. We talked about the line when it first came out, Seth, right? And I thought that this would be probably get a pick'em game, or maybe would be favored by kickoff, and that's what's happening right now.
Right. Well, I mean, I think they're a little bit burned from last year. Army was a favorite going into the game last year, and of course, Navy won. If you look at the scheduling and you look at the team's performance, the record is very similar. Of course, 4-7 4-7 and 5-6. Is that right? Do I have that right? Yes. Um,
Yeah, that's correct.
and Navy plays in a conference. Hey, they beat Central Florida. I spent yesterday interviewing a guy from Central Florida on another type of story, and somehow we started talking about Army and Navy. I guess I told him I was going down to the game to cover it, and he goes, "Boy, they took us apart. They beat us, and they were a good team. They were ranked at that point. They beat them at Central Florida. We don't know what kind of team we're going to get from Navy on Saturday, and Coach Ken comes into like just like Army wants to win this game, and it's everything to West Point. It's everything to the folks down at Annapolis. They're not going to a bowl game either. Neither team beat Air Force this year, so this is it. This is the game. National TV audience, prime time, 3 o'clock in the Saturday afternoon. No other college football game on, at least a Division I college football, FBS football game on, as far as I know. This is the game. This is Army Navy.
Yeah, I think there's one more game on. There's Holy Cross and South Dakota State going on at noon.
Yeah, that's
So
that's FCS. So yeah, they're in
yeah,
their tournament. They're in their I guess 24 teams make the FCS tournament now. So it's pretty interesting. But
wow.
as far as FBS,
Hey, what do you think the over under is on the Army Navy game?
the over under the Army Navy game.
Yeah, what do you think it
Yeah,
is?
I'm going to guess. I have not looked. I'm going to say it's obviously very low. I'm going to say the over under is. I'm going to go real low, 28.
Close. It's 32. It's 32. So
That's
what last
that's,
year
that's
was 17-14 Navy, 17-13 Navy. So I mean there was under it was the under that you really got the under last year. So yeah, I was on I had a chance to interview yesterday Tyler and offensive coordinator Brent Davis yesterday via Zoom. Talked to them about the story on like the game per Army on offense and how I mean Coach Davis wasn't telling me the exact plays they were going to run on Saturday, but he was going to tell me how he gets to them, and how you have to be a little bit different, but you can't get totally out of your comfort zone when you're game planning for this game. And I did also take a look at listen to Brian Newberry's media session from yesterday. I believe he's the Navy defensive coordinator, and he said that he gets a little anxious in this game. They've had 3 weeks to prepare for this game, right, Navy? So I mean, sometimes he says you kind of can second guess yourself um, with what you're doing because you just have a lot of time to prepare. But Brian Newberry's done an excellent job against Army's offense in the time he's been defensive coordinator with Navy. This is his fourth Army Navy game, and he's done an excellent job slowing down Army's offense. I want to look this up, Seth. I just didn't have the time today. The team who usually rushes for the most yards is likely going to win this game, right? Most of the time, I would think. And I want to see how true that was, stat wise. And didn't get a chance to do that, but I'm going to have that for the story I'm working on the game planning for Army. What I did do is I did look up. So Army wins this year, right? They've rushed for over 400 yards in their 5 wins. Granted, the competition in their wins, the best team that they beat all year is UConn, right? Seth, you would say?
I would say UConn definitely is the best team. Yeah, we're going to a bowl game. The best team, and we lost to a bunch of teams going to a bowl game, but UConn is a team that we beat. So, yeah, they're going to be
Yeah.
in a bowl game, and that was the team we played.
Yeah. So in
I'm
their
going
losses, go ahead.
I was going to say that I'm going to agree with Munkin. I think both teams are going to rush for a decent amount of yards. I don't think it's going to be 400, but I think we're going to see 200 yards per team. But I think it's going to come down to who
Mhm.
loses the ball more often, or who misses the golden opportunity to score, whatever that might be a field goal or touchdown throughout the game. I think this game is so tightly fought, and I'm not sure if it's going to be close or not. I'll give you my call later on, but I think it comes down to these lost fumbles or the few interceptions that might be had. Nobody likes to throw the ball here. I think Navy throws more than we do a little bit. But that's the way I think. I think they're both going to rush for 200 to 300 yards because that's what they do. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some passing by both teams because they have to break it up a little bit, a little bit more by Navy than us. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to fumbles.
Well, what I was getting to too is in Army's losses this year. So they've rushed for over 400 yards in their wins, and they've rushed for 200 yards in the losses. And now one of those games is Air Force, where they only had 78 yards rushing, so that factors in those 6 losses. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting stat to look at. I was on this morning. I recorded a interview with Yards and Stripes. It's a podcast that covers Service Academy football with Price Atkinson, and that should be up probably tomorrow, I'm guessing. My interview that I did with them. And they asked me about, so what trick plays, what does Brent Davis have up his sleeve against, Navy? Usually they give Navy a little bit different look. In these games, and I'm like, my answer was, I wish I was in the coaches rooms in the meeting rooms for that, right? Because you just don't know. I think that I basically said that I think you're going to see a steady diet of Tyler in this game. But what happens if that doesn't work? Where are they gonna go there? They're gonna go to the fullback. Now, Brent Davis did say in our interview that's up on YouTube. If you want to check out our YouTube channel, the Brent Davis interview is up on our YouTube channel. I asked him about Tyson Riley, right? Because Tyson Riley played slot back for most of the game against UMass. I think he had one play at fullback. He might have lined up at one play. I was like, so could we see Riley and Buchanan in the same backfield? Are we going to see, Riley play slot and fullback in this game? What's it going to look like? He didn't really tip his cap too much, but he did say that the thought at the beginning of the season was for Riley to kind of try to play both this season, but he got a little banged up and he hasn't practiced a lot. He told me that Riley had 3 practices at slot back before the UMass game, 3 that week, and he played all but one of his snaps, I believe, at slot back. And the thing with that is, Seth, if you play Tyson Riley at slot back for most of this Navy game, he only had, I think, 1 carry against UMass. Maybe that was by design. Maybe it was, hey, let's just get him comfortable playing the position and get him some reps and stuff. But why do you think if they're going to play Tyson Riley at slot back, what is your thinking there against Navy? I have my thoughts, but do you have any thoughts about playing Tyson Riley at slot back in this game?
I just hope they do something different than we've seen over the last 6 games or so. They can play Riley as slot back. They can play him. They can play anybody anywhere. I just want to see something different. What I don't want to see, you mentioned before, is our quarterbacks going up the middle, because Navy's going to be prepared for that. This is what we've done over the last this season. Every game, the other 11 games, with a couple of exceptions. We tried it a little bit different with UMass, but UMass was a bad team. I hope they try some new stuff. I hope they try some different stuff that they've been practicing. And I also hope they don't get too crazy, because we've had some bad breaks with the fake punts and the end arounds and the halfback option pass. I think we had 1 or 2 of those tries. They're not working. So let's not get too crazy, but let's have an offense that spreads their defense around, and then hopefully we can accomplish a lot. If we spread their defense out, then we can go up the middle. If we bring them in, then we can go on outside. That's the key to the game. This is really a game of the coaching staff as much as is the execution of the players. And I am hopeful that we're going to see a well-coached Army team with some trick plays that don't go too crazy going in. If you're going to put Riley at slot back, good. That's good. What are we going to do there? What are we going to do with it? Is that going to open up more holes? If he's going outside with some pitches, or whoever it is that going to open up some more holes inside? It remains to be seen. And
I have a thought.
Good.
I do have a thought here. So you have a Tyson Riley, right? You have a 260-pound slot back, 260-pound slot back. So what are you going to do with that 260-pound slot back? Have you seen plays where sometimes they'll put the slot back in motion, send them through the gut, and have a follow by the fullback or the quarterback? I think you might see that. I
Yeah.
think you might see Tyson Riley leading from a motion position, maybe, possibly. Who knows? I mean, you think that. So then, what happens with the fullback, right? What do you do with the fullback? Do you send? You can't send 2 guys into the gut of the Navy defense simultaneously. You can't do that. But I think that you might see a couple plays where Tyson Riley's a lead blocker, and maybe you will see him on a pitch play, and maybe you'll have to have maybe you know what I think that has been underrated this year, and I saw a video. I think the guy's name is Cole Kubalik. I might have the pronunciation wrong, but he's a football analyst, I believe, maybe even a TV guy, and he had a video of Josh Lingenfelter's blocking, right? And I think that when Army's running all these plays up the middle, right, and when Army's running these pitch plays, can you run off tackle and can you run behind Lingenfelter? Because Lingenfelter is a pretty good blocker, Seth. He's a above average blocker, and for Army, he's an elite blocker. For their system, he's probably one of the best blocking tight ends that they've had, right? So can you run plays behind him in the offense? Maybe you could do something like that where it's not necessarily running up the gut. Maybe my idea of Tyson Riley lead blocking through the center is off. I haven't seen any practices of them in the last 2 weeks. Busy with work, haven't had a chance to go up to practice. Wish I could have, but Maybe that's an idea. Maybe get maybe getting behind Lingenfelter and trying to get a couple of yards. In this game, Seth, right? You got to move the chains, right? And you can move the chains on four downs a lot. That doesn't mean going for it on fourth down in your own territory a lot, but that means, hey, 3 yards, get 3 yards, get a third and short, and see what you can do there. And if it's a fourth and short, you be if you want to be a little creative and not run Buchanan all the time on fourth down, maybe you run Tyler, maybe you run Riley. You know what it is? And I'm babbling on here. I'm sorry. That's what we do in late night podcasts, and Seth. That's what we do. Um, Good news on the injury front for Army this week, from what we've heard. Both Coach Munkin and Coach Davis said that Ijon Marshall's back practicing, so it looks like he'll be ready to go for Army Navy, and that's good news for them because that gives them another game breaking guy who's shown that he can bust off some runs, who can have big catches in the passing game. Tyrell Robinson. We know he had here, Bay Knight right now is asking, how healthy are the Army slot backs, and we're getting to it right now. Bay, so looks like Ijon Marshall's going to play, and so they have Ijon Marshall, they have Brahim Murphy, they'll have Maurice Ballon, and they'll have Tyson Riley if you need him at slot too. I think those are the guys that'll be in the rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if Ijon Marshall and Tyson Riley start at slot and Buchanan starts at fullback. That wouldn't be surprising. And I talked to Brent Davis a little bit about also maybe getting Hayden Reed and Markel Johnson some looks in this game, right? Seth, you want to keep the fullbacks fresh in this game. If you're going to do a lot of running with them, which they didn't do last year with the fullbacks, they didn't run the fullbacks a lot last year. If you're going to shift to like running the fullbacks a lot, get keep them fresh, right? Give Markel Johnson and Hayden Reed a taste in this Army Navy game. They've shown that they can move the football forward. They showed that they can get some yards after contact.
And
And
maybe we'll line up with more than one receiver in a position to go out for a pass. I'd like to see us have more than one guy going out for a pass if we're going to pass it. I know we rely on a little bit of the fake stuff to get the guys open, and that has worked a couple of times, but. We got to try. Navy knows exactly how we play, just like Air Force knows exactly how we play. And it didn't work for us against Air Force. They figured out our game plan in the second half, and they stopped us. And that was a winnable game, and we didn't. Navy knows more than Air Force. These guys know each other. They know what we're going to come out and do. Or they think they know what we're going to come out to do. We have to go out there and be, A, we have to be ready for what they're going to do, and B, we have to come out with some stuff that they're not prepared for. And I hope that the last 2 weeks, after the Massachusetts game, these guys have been practicing and coming up with stuff and hoping for the best here, hoping for the best. It's gonna be a typical Army Navy game, but unfortunately, I went back and looked. Every game Army's won over Navy over the last X number of years, which hasn't been that many. It's always close. We win by 4 points, 5 points, 3 points, whatever it might be. Okay, when Navy beats us, and they have that long winning streak, sometimes they're beating us by 20 points. Sometimes it's close, but sometimes it's not. So who knows what's going to happen on Saturday? The weather should be okay. So I don't think that's going to hurt either team. And I'm just hoping that we have some kind of plan in place and that we can maneuver just like we did against UMass. Defensively, UMass came out and scored a touchdown the first drive, and they changed some. They realized what they were doing. They changed around, and that was the end of UMass. I just hope defensively we're also prepared for what Navy's going to come to town with, because these guys have been coaching for 3 weeks for this game, probably the whole season, but for the last 3 weeks for this game. And this game means as much to them, as I said before, as it does to us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not interesting, but we'll see what the defense has been playing well. And I said on that Yards and Stripes podcast, I think that in this game, and you talked about it too, just a turnover, right? A big play by the defense, a fourth down stop, a turnover, a big play on third down that forces a punt. Everything, every inch, every play matters in this game. That's what coaches talk about. That's what defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators talk about too. So I think that I think that Army's defense has been making those plays in the last couple games, and we'll see if they can come up big again. I mean, what UMass game was 4 turnovers, right? That's correct, right? The UMass game was four
What, what,
turnovers, and
yeah. So,
yeah,
I
and
mean,
we'll
also the thing you didn't mention is offensively. What about the penalties? We get hit with these holding calls, and we get hit with that low block call, that personal foul. What's it called? That the when two guys block,
chop
one
block.
low,
The
yeah,
chop block.
yeah, chop block. Sorry. So we get called for those. That's a personal foul. That's 15 yards, and say goodbye to your offensive strategy. We got to avoid that, and we got to avoid the holding. And defensively, we got to make some turnovers. That's all. That's the game. That's what it's going to come down to. Whoever does it, let's be honest. I imagine both teams are nervous going on the field. They're playing in front of 70,000 people. It's on national TV. It's the game that they all have been talking about for the last 12 months. So hopefully they're more nervous than we are, and they make more mistakes than we do. We'll see. I think both teams will be prepared. I think both teams will be ready. I know they want to do their best. I know they're playing in front of their family and their friends, and either in person or on TV. So you're expecting the best. Sometimes the best doesn't always happen. This is war. This is football war, and everybody's out
We
there
ha-
trying to do what.
we have a bunch of people watching us live right now. If you're watching live and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send them our way. We're past the midnight hour here on the East Coast, and we're going strong here, Seth. Um, I was going to bring up a little bit about the Navy offense. Dabo Fofana is a guy who leads them in rushing. He has 799 yards and he has 6 touchdowns. He leads them in both. He's the fullback. He leads them in both rushing yards and touchdowns this year. So he's a guy that, of course, Army's going to want to keep their eye on. I was talking about this earlier today and even during the week about Army's defensive line, how they've been rotating guys in and out. They probably played up to 10 guys on the defensive line this year. And they kind of spread out the snaps. If the guys are playing 30 snaps in the game, that's probably a lot for their defensive line this year. And they have guys that have been through this, like, Kwabena Bonzu is a guy who has tons of experience in this game. You have guys like Nate Smith, who's also played in this game. You have guys like Darius Richardson, who's a lot those nose tackles. They're going to be rotating those nose tackles in there, keeping them fresh. It's almost as important to keep those nose tackles fresh as the fullbacks in this game for Army, I think, Seth, because that's an important position. Holding the line, maybe taking up multiple blockers so the linebackers can make plays. And inside linebacker for Army this year, right? It's been Leo Lowen. And it's been like who started next to Leo Lowen this year? Calvin Crummy started next to him. Peyton Hampton started next to him. Camden O'Gara started next to him. I think I'm missing one other person that maybe has started next to Leo Lowen this year. And so, who's going to be those inside linebackers are important to make those tackles and cover ground too. Leo Lowen's going to cover ground on those pitch plays, on those end arounds. If they try some end arounds that were very successful last year against Army, Army needs to stay home on those plays. Army can't be fooled by those end around plays. We'll know how much homework Army's done on this game if Navy tries one of those end around plays and it's very successful. Those are a couple plays that really hurt them last year. We'll see what happens. How
That would
much
be
can
very
Andre Carter?
disappointing if yeah, exactly. Hey, any injuries on defense? Any major injuries?
Well, Jabari Moore, he got banged up. He only played, I think, like 7 or 8 plays against UMass. I'm not sure what the injury was, but he was made available for interviews yesterday. So normally when they make a player available for interviews, that means that they're gonna, play. Usually, if a player's hurt, they don't make him available for interviews. So he was on yesterday on Zoom call. So I'm thinking he's okay. Um, Bo Nicholas Paul, I'm not sure about. Bo Nicholas Paul was hurt in the UConn game, I believe, and I'm not sure if they're going to have Bo Nicholas Paul. But pretty much, other than that, I don't know of any injuries. I haven't heard of any injuries on the defense. Peyton Hampton hasn't played in a while. Not in a while. Peyton Hampton didn't play against UMass, so I'm not sure. He's a guy just to look out for. We'll see. He seems in pairings. I mean, he's a senior. He's waited his turn to play this year, waited his turn to start. And there's games where he's been pretty instinctive and made some pretty good plays. So we'll see if he's healthy and he can play. Yeah, why Bay Knight saying why not have Riley lead for Tyler or the fullback sounds good to me. Yeah, that's what I talked about earlier. Is maybe that's part little wrinkle, so to speak. A wrinkle that they could use is Tyson Riley as a lead blocker from the slot back position, or even getting like an Ijon Marshall on the edge with Tyson Riley out there blocking too. What if you line up Josh Lingenfelter on one side with Riley, toss a play out to Ijon Marshall here? You got two big guys plus the offensive line to block for you. Yeah, maybe that's
Yep.
something that they could do. We talk about getting the slot backs the ball a little bit more. I think last year that was their game plan. That Tyrell Robinson had a lot of the carries last year, and they tried to get him involved, but Navy was able to kind of slow that down. So I don't think you're going to see Ijon Marshall get double digit or slotbacks get double digit carries in this game, but a change of pace would be nice and chunk yardage. Seth, they need chunk yardage in this game for the offense. It's nice to grind out. It's nice, right, to have those 8-minute drives, those 15-minute play drives, but at some point, you need a chunk play or two in this game, right? You need a big passing play on play action. You need a run that's more than 20 yards. You need to change up change up field position too. So you know, we'll see. I mean, we talk a lot
Army
about the
stats.
offensive side.
I'm looking at Army stats right now, and and of course Alston he has 16 receptions. Only one other wide receiver caught a pass this year. Cole Catabone caught one pass, and for 7 yards. Everybody else, at least according to what
Yeah,
I'm
we
looking
talked
here, yeah,
about that last. We talked about
yeah,
that.
yeah. So, I mean, we got to see other people get into it. Monken said to us last week after the UMass game how important getting those big plays are. And, we're grinding it out. You always have the possibility of a penalty or a fumble. If you score quickly, big chunks of yards, it makes it easier for your offense. I agree with you. We have to see that. We have to see some big plays. We have to see we have to take the momentum away from Navy as fast as we can. And then, like we did last year,
Yeah,
we started the game great.
yeah,
Unfortunately, Navy grabbed it back, and they were grinding it out, and that was the difference. It was a close game. We have to take the momentum away from Navy and keep Navy, kind of on their heels here, and hope that they're not that they're the team who's confused out there more than we are. As I said before, it comes down to two things: execution of by the players, and a coaching strategy by the coaches that gives the players the opportunity to be successful. If we do that, if Monken and his squad does that, Army's going to win this game. If not, Navy's going to win this game. It's very simple here. The
yeah.
talent is pretty much equal. It's pretty much equal. Army's better in certain positions, Navy's better in certain positions, but more or less equal. I don't think Navy has that many injuries either. They had 3 weeks off. They're ready to go. Army had 2 weeks off, or 1 week off. Navy had 2 weeks off, and they'll be ready to go. It really truly comes down to execution and strategy. That's it. And
Well, I was
and
thinking about last. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. And then you throw in the mistakes, execution strategy and mistakes. Mistakes being fumbles, penalties, missed opportunities, missed field goals or something like that, missed extra points. We've missed a couple of extra points in the last few weeks. Can happen on Saturday. Can happen. These games
No,
are
no.
close.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Andrew S. I really would like to post your comment. I'm gonna read it. Having some technical difficulties over here, internet issues. But Andrew S. says he did some homework for me. I appreciate that. In the past 10 years, the team with the most rushing yards has won 8 times. The exceptions are the 2012 Navy win and the 2017 Army win. The 17 Army win is the snow game, right? Is that not the snow game? Is 2017 Army win?
I think it was the snow
I'm
game.
trying to
Was
remember. Yeah, I
it
think it
18?
was. I think it was.
Army was wearing white.
I'll look.
Army was wearing white, which means
Yeah.
that means they're the visiting team, right?
Oh no.
Oh,
Go ahead. Try to figure this out while I look it up real quick.
uh, Army's the
I
visiting
should know
team in
this,
odd.
but it's been a long day.
Yeah, Army's the visiting team in odd years. They're the home team this year.
Yeah, that was the snow game. The snow game was 2017.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, that was a
So
game where Navy played a little bit better than Army, and Army was able to hold them off. That great tackle by John Voight or slowing down Malcolm Perry and not the defense not giving up a touchdown there was a huge play in that game. So that 2017 game was very yeah. So that was a game where Navy outrushed Army, but Army won the game. Um, Real quick, I'm gonna look up the 2012 game real fast. I was at these games, Seth, and just I guess a lot going on in my life where I'm trying to remember what the 20 if I'm remembering what the 2012 game is, let me see. That's a 17-13 game. Um that Navy won. And is it that
that was the game that got the
okay.
fumble at the end, was it?
I it might have been. It might have been. That's what I'm looking up right now. Um
Steelman's fumble was that 2012? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that is 2012, yeah. That is the 2012 game, so,
That was
yeah.
our game
Yeah,
to win. Yeah, let's be honest.
dude, I have stories to tell about that game. Maybe I'll put it in a book down the road, or who knows, maybe I'll do a podcast on it, I don't know, that was an interesting game at the end of the game too, after it was a very short press conference after that game, and then, had some time alone with Rich Ellerson, I did, and, man. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that for now. So,
I'd
yeah,
love
it
to
was definitely
I
eye-opening, just some of the things
well,
he had to say. Of course, go ahead.
no, we're gonna have 2 hours to drive down together on Saturday, so maybe you'll tell me.
Oh boy, maybe if you're lucky, I love that drive going through. I have a shortcut that I go through New Jersey, like Flemington and into like Pennsylvania, get into Pennsylvania through like the Trenton area, go that way because you know what? There's a Chick-fil-A away, Seth. And so we may be making a stop at Chick-fil-A before the game. We'll see how the timing is and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, so go ahead.
no, I said I love Chick-fil-A. That's all.
Yeah, I think that pretty much touched on a lot. I thought there was a couple other things I want to talk about. Yeah, I had some things in my mind that I wanted to talk about. Special teams, special teams that the kicking has to be right in this game. I mean, we'll see if Army can get Navy into some punting situations where they can go after the punter. I mean, the Yukon game, they were successful in their first punt block of the season. I mean, they've been close on a bunch of them this year. They've been close on a bunch of punts, getting a bunch of punts this year. So we'll see if Sean Saturnio can devise something if Army can force it, if and when Army can force the Navy into a punting situation. Man, I'm just so impressed with Navy's run defense, right? I mean, it's pretty impressive what they did last year against Army, and of course, they were the leader of their defense. There was the Diego Fago, I think is still with the Ravens. Um, and this year, I mean, John Marshall's been a really good player for them. Very versatile player. He had 4 sacks in that win over.
So I just want to make.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Maybe
I'm
Seth.
looking at the Navy schedule this year, and there's a couple of disappointing games. They lost to Delaware, which is a good team, good FBS team, but they lost 14-7. They got clobbered by Memphis. They beat East Carolina, lost by 3 to Air Force, just like we did. Tulsa, they clobbered. SMU, they lost by 6. Houston, who was supposed to be good, turned out to be not that good. Temple, a disappointing team, they beat in overtime. Notre Dame, they lost by 3 points. Granted, they came all the way back. They were getting beat. They were getting beat pretty badly, and they made it
Yeah.
close. And then, of course, the UC where they won by 3. I thought they won by more than that. This Navy team is, it's they're only a couple of. Either way, they could have been, a better team, or they lose the Temple game and they lost they beat East Carolina. They won 2 games in overtime, so they could have been as easily, it could be 2-9 going into this game, or they could actually, won a couple of these other games. So we don't know what we're going to get here from the Navy team. My hope is that. Like I said before, that the talent is pretty much equal and the coaching is equal, and it comes down to the execution and the errors and the penalties and stuff like that. And hopefully, we have fewer of those. It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be it's going to say a lot about the directions of these programs. If one team can beat the other team significantly, it's going to say a lot, in my opinion. But right now,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's
Let's,
not it would be unexpected if this game was a blowout, right? I mean, with the game, how tight the games have been in the last couple of years. Bay Knight has that Navy's worst and best losses of the year, according to Bay Knight 20, is Delaware is um Delaware would be probably their worst loss of the year. They should have been an easy win, and Notre Dame should have been a blowout, but things were different. Yeah, Navy's the last 6 quarters that Navy's played of football have been pretty impressive. So I mean,
right.
if you get that Navy team, Army's up against it. Army is up against it and needs to. They say all the time you have to play perfect football if you want to win at West Point. Well, I mean, you're gonna have to be you're gonna have to be no pun, you have to be on point in this game if you get that Navy team, which I'm assuming you're going to get a pretty good version of Navy, considering like I said, they won last year, right? They know a lot of these kids, a lot of these players on Navy know the feeling of singing second. They were a younger team last year, so they have a decent amount of people back from last year's team that experienced that win, that had played a decent role in that win. So we'll see what happens in it. We'll see. I think that who throws the first punch and who responds, basically. Who goes on that extended drive, who makes the big stop on a third down and short, who's got enough who runs strong enough to pick up that first down on a fourth, because there's going to be those type of plays in this game, right? There's
Yeah,
going to be those type of plays.
absolutely. That's why you play the game.
Yep, and
That's why
man,
you
I'm
play the
I'm
game.
looking forward. I was trying to do the math here, and I mean, again, lots going on. No excuse. I think this could be my 17th Army Navy game. I think it could be. Um, there were a couple years where I wasn't the main guy, that I got to do sidebars on the game, and then from 2007 to 2018, I was at every one. I think 19 and 21, I was there too. So I mean, it's been. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of these games. Lately we know what these games are about, and I want to bring this up real quick because I think sometimes it might get that doesn't get lost, but it's a storyline. But the respect the teams have, right? The respect the coaches have for each other. And it goes down not just Coach Munkin and Coach Niamatalolo. It goes to the coordinators. Brian Newberry said he has a lot of respect for what Army does, and Brent Davis was very said a lot of good things about what Navy's has done on defense this year. A lot of respect factor, and I tell you, I think mostly in a lot of years that I've covered this game, win, lose, or draw, and I think it's might have been during the Army losses when I've seen this. Ivan Jasper um, has found an Army player at the end of the game, and has met an Army player at the end of the game, and I'm not saying consoled an Army player, but I said, hey, way to fight hard, stuff, and you don't see that a lot in rivalry games, right? You don't see a lot of the coaches from the opposite side, seeking out a player from the other team and saying, "Hey, you played a heck of a game. You gave us all you got, and all the best in whatever what you're doing once you graduate and that kind of stuff. Um, I saw that for him with Kel Walker during when Kel Walker played. Um, I think that was 2019. I think the 2019 game. Um, and it's just there's a lot of respect for both of these teams, and I think that's what makes this
So
game
I agree.
special. I think it's not. This is not Army Air Force. This is not Navy Air Force. This game, and Army Air Force. The respect factor is, they want to beat each other pretty bad in those games. And of course, Army wants to beat Navy pretty bad. Navy wants to beat Army pretty bad. But when it's said and done, and when the last whistle is blown, or maybe when the alma maters are over, and you find players from Army, players from Navy who had connections. I know there's an Army punter that has a connection to a Navy who was his high school teammate in um in Tennessee, I believe. There's connections all over the place in this game. Guys that have been heck, Jeff Monken, he doesn't like to say it a lot, but he was a Navy assistant. He was a Navy assistant with Kennedy Mato under Paul Johnson. I mean that's years removed, but there's people still that he probably bumps into that have been at Navy forever. So yeah, I mean the respect
Well,
factor is there, and
let me conclude with this. There is no other sporting event in America on an annual basis that draws such a high percentage of powerful people. From the president of the United States, Donald Trump used to go to the game. I don't know whether President Biden's coming to the game or not. I don't know if he is, but obviously
probably
the
not.
secretary,
Probably not.
yeah, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Army, Secretary of Navy, top generals. There is no other game, no other sporting event.
Big time
Uh,
brass.
yeah, maybe with the exception of the Super Bowl, that attracts such powerful people. There is no other sporting event that attracts such a large percentage of the population that is interested either in one or the other team because of their affiliation with the military. Father, mother, maybe they were in the service. And just the public and the overall public, the people who have nothing to do with West Point or Annapolis, have for some reason pay attention to this game. And it's that's the beauty of Army Navy, of impact with
Yep.
Army Air Force and Navy Air Force, but we don't. The Air Force is a newer team, and they're not. They're all the way out west in Colorado, and we're here, in New York and in Maryland. And this, the tradition and all the other stuff. But the fact that the game is played, traditionally, and I know it's going to change next year, traditionally halfway between the two schools, with some exceptions, that makes such a difference. You got guys, coming down from New York, and they have guys coming up from DC, and they all want to be there, and it's a big deal. And I have friends in the military, who were in the military, no more. And they won't miss this game. They show up on Thursday, and I guess there's a hotel that's the Army hotel, and the hotel, and they go there and they have a
Yeah.
great time. They renew old acquaintances on both sides, and then the game starts, and they hate each other, and then 10 minutes after the game ends, they sit there and say, "Oh well." The loser says, "Oh well," and the winner says, "Yes, we won," and they move on to and worry about next year. And
Yeah, they start.
it's a great experience.
How,
Great
how many
experience.
how many college football rivalries have a gala the night before where all those guys that you're talking about, the high ranking, you know, officers, or people, the past people of significance meet, and just they have an Army Navy gala, and I want to just I mentioned an Army player that has a connection to a Navy player, and I just wanted to give a shout out. I wanted to give a mention to Cooper Allen. He's a freshman punter for Army, and his teammate in high school was Jackson Campbell, who's also is a Navy player. So I just wanted to get those names out there. I mean, I'm sure I wanted to go through the rosters, and I'm sure there's a handful of other guys who've either played together or played against each other. Um, at the high school level and now are playing against each other in college and one in the best rivalry in college football. You see those polls out on social media a lot. Um, yeah. You see a lot of, those polls about what the best college rivalry is and college football rivalry is, and you'll see what, Ohio State, Michigan mentioned in there, and, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's not Ohio State, Michigan. It's, it's Army and Navy, no doubt. If you've been to an Army Navy game and experienced an Army Navy game, which I am so honored and blessed to have all these years, it's something that you'll talk about. I was thinking about this, Seth. These games, right? Because we've had on guests on on this podcast, former Army players, and these former Army players have played games. We've had them back into the '60s, and they still remember like specific plays in the Army Navy game. Fans still remember specific plays in the Army Navy game
I'm
going
one of
back. You're probably one of them. You probably remember plays going back 30, 40 years in the Army
I,
Navy game. You
I
could probably
remember.
point out a turning point in the 1982 Army Navy game, probably. So I mean, that's how important this game is to so many people, and that's what a college football rivalry, the best college football rivalry, is all about. I mean, there's so many. You got people that are serving right now watching this game overseas. There's so many connections to this game, and man, it's going to be really fun to cover on Saturday.
I'm looking forward to. One more thing you have to mention too is a lot of these kids were recruited by the other school. They're being
Sure.
recruited by all three schools, and they have to choose if they decide to go service academy. They choose one over the other, and so there's a little bit of what if and stuff like that going on, or the coach is saying, "I almost had that kid. He went to the other school." So not only do they know each other, they live similar lives when they're in college, when they're at their academies, and and they've been talking for since last December. Army's been talking about getting revenge, and Navy's been talking about holding on. And it's the most important game. It's always the most important. I got to tell you, I remember I've been to a number of the games myself too. I've probably been to about 20 games over the years, maybe even more than that. But one game I did not attend. I was working as a newspaper reporter, and I could not cover the game. I could not go to the game because I was working. But I had the opportunity to watch the Army Navy game of 1981, which ended in a 3-3 tie, and Navy was a big favorite. I don't remember their record, but they were a big favorite over Army, and the game was played at night. Back then, that was one of the first night games. Or maybe it was after dark. It might have been night game. Might have started at 4 or 5 o'clock, but it was night, and similar to what this game's going to be. And Army held them to a 3-3 tie, almost like the famous Harvard beats Yale 29-29. The Army, came out of nowhere and held their own. And I'm sitting in a bar waiting for my event to start, and I wouldn't leave until the game ended. And there must have been 200 people in a bar that could probably hold 50 watching this game. Okay, now granted, this was
Yeah.
in New York, the New York area. A lot of people live near the and there's a lot of Army fans, some Navy fans. But I got to tell you, the feeling there was unbelievable. It was just like nobody could take their eyes off the game. And these are two teams that are going nowhere. Army had a losing record. I think Navy was pretty good that year, but they weren't going anywhere. They won't win national championships. But everybody was watching this game, and that's what this game's all about. And you're going
Yeah.
to see
We
6,000 people at that stadium, and everybody's rooting for. I took my two boys to the Army Navy game last year at the Meadowlands, and one of them sat with me. One sat a few sections away, and after the game, all they could say, they said it was a good game. It wasn't the best college football they ever played. They're both college football nuts, but it was a good, exciting game. And they said to me the pageantry of this event really shook both of them, and they were so impressed with everything. That's the way, the way they sing the national anthem, the way that they root for their teams. It's unlike any experience I've ever had when it comes to a sporting event. And it's like I keep saying,
it's next level.
It's Army Navy football, and it's
Yes.
I can't wait now. I can't wait for Chick-fil-A with you. And
Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's not a guarantee. Hey, real quick, in that 81 game, Navy finished 7-3-1. Army was 3-7-1. So they had the opposite records in that game. Really quick, would want to give a shout out to William De Los Santos, who was watching us or is watching us right now. He said the 2012 Army Navy game, Army wore those Battle of the Bulge uniforms, if you remember. Those were pretty neat uniforms. Those were the Navy, the Nike, when Nike. I think those were way before, 4 years before the 2016 when they used to base them instead of on battles, so to speak, on units. Right? They started the unit uniforms in 2016, I believe. William De Los Santos is still with us. He says last year was tough. Multiple delay of games not called, and Diego Fago's terrible face mask no call on Army's last play nearly took Anderson's head off. Yeah, there were a lot of things in that game. That was a game. Remember, the play that I remember the most last year was, well, one of the plays I remember the most is when Anthony Atkins had that run and Diego Fago was holding on to his ankle, which seemed like for 7 or 8 seconds after the tackle and wasn't letting go. And I think Atkins he was battling an ankle injury that season, and it was just like, man, I mean, I guess do what you have to do, right, to win, but it's just not something that really sat well. I remember Steve Anderson and I talking about that play after the game. I didn't really factor into the final score too much, but I mean, yeah. William De Los Santos also saying getting the NASA team, not the Navy team.
well, he's
I
right
guess
about.
that's a shout out to the Navy uniforms, right, this year. So yeah, I think we know heading into this game. I think I said this on our last podcast, or I said it to somebody I was talking to. We know Army's going to win the march on, right? We know Army's going to win the march on. We know Army's going to win the uniform battle. They looks like they won the uniform battle. Now let's see if they can win the game, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if they can win this game. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have coverage for you. We plan on getting to the stadium early on Saturday. Hopefully, definitely going to have hopefully some pregame videos, march on. We're gonna have a couple photographers there. It looks like we're gonna have Margaret Kite and Lynn Fern there for Black Knight Nation, taking photos and hopefully some video for us. We're gonna have wall to wall coverage. I said this on the Yards and Stripes podcast earlier today. When we're at a game, when we're present, when we're covering a game live on Black Knight Nation, I want to give our fans, the Army fans, and the people that follow us on Black Knight Nation the best possible experience that they can have. So please check out if you could follow the Black Knight Nation Twitter account. It's BK Knight Nation, and you can follow my account at Sal Internet on Twitter. We'll have plenty of pregame stuff to get. If you can't attend the game, you're going to want to be on those accounts. Our Instagram account, Black_Knight_Nation. You go to our Instagram account, we're going to have stuff there. We're going to have plenty of photos. We're going to have plenty of videos. I'm hoping to bump into a few grads at tailgates. Maybe we'll do a quick, live video with a grad and just talk about the game. Hopefully we can do stuff like that at the game. I want to give Army football fans are so dedicated and have such a passion for their team. I want to give them the best experience here when we're at games, and hopefully we can do that on Saturday. And you're gonna have the game story coverage. I'm gonna be at the post game. We're gonna post the post game videos right away. Who knows? Maybe we'll get if Army's on the winning side. Who knows? Maybe we'll get an interview, a one-on-one interview with a player. Who hopefully we can do that. And man, it's something that this is the bowl game. We haven't talked about this, but this is the bowl game for both teams, right? This is their bowl game. They're not playing in the postseason, and they're not playing after this game. For a lot of these players, this is their last football game. For some, like Andre Carter, who will get a chance at the next level. I'm sure Andre Carter wants to do everything he can possible in this game to send out his fellow seniors with a win. I'm sure that Marquell Broughton, who we haven't mentioned a lot tonight, I'm sure he wants to do. He's a 2-year captain. I'm sure he wants to go out um win a win over Navy. And I talked about this on the again. I'm plugging this Yards and Stripes podcast. So check that out soon. I'll retweet it on my Twitter once they post the podcast. I think when you have a guy like Marquell Broughton and when you have a guy like Connor Bishop who hold high positions in the Corps of Cadets, right? One's a regimental commander, one is Connor Bishop is very high up in the Corps of Cadets. This game means a lot to only the Army football team. This means a lot to the Corps Cadets, and that's their leaders out on the field. That's the Corps Cadets leaders out on the field. On offense, that's one of the leaders of the Corps Cadets, one of the high-ranking guys in the Corps Cadets on the field. On defense, that's one of 4 regimental commanders in the Corps Cadets on the field. This game, I think, to me just covering this game for so long, Army's had I believe they had a first captain on their team in the past that was a football player in the last 10 or 15 years. But I mean, to have a football captain like Marquell and to have a guy who also has a high ranking position in the Corps, this game means a lot to the football team. This means a lot to the Corps. I was listening to Jeff Munkin's radio show today while I was at work, and there was a cadet that was asking Munkin a question on the radio show that was fired up already on a Wednesday about this game. So, I mean, this is what it's all about. Army Navy, the best college football rivalry, and man, I think it's going to be good theater on Saturday, Seth, and we're going to have the coverage. And like I said, guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We kind of put this together on the fly, but we want to give you guys a chance to listen to our thoughts. We want to get your comments in, and we appreciate everybody that's been watching tonight. And like I said, hopefully we're gonna have tomorrow. Today, this morning, we're gonna have Rolly Stitchway on our podcast, and look out for that. I'll be posting the link to that shortly. So, Seth, look forward to covering the game with you on Saturday, and for now, we'll sign off on out. I'm gonna have a story pretty soon on that on the offense. Army's offense, and hopefully, definitely have a prediction time story too, and maybe a couple other stories. Thanks a lot for your support. We appreciate and forward to giving you the best coverage that we possibly can on Saturday. Seth, thanks a lot. Late night podcasting, nothing better.
Yeah, good night. I'm going to bed.